let's go ahead and get started. I am recording the session, so I'll send it out to all of you as soon as it's over today. And as always, any questions, please just drop those into the chat box or raise your hand in the reactions, and I can actually take you off mute. And I would really love to hear those questions. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Today's webinar topic is Priority Matrix for Task History and Audit Trails, how Priority Matrix supports your organization through growth. So let's break that down so I can explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. And I will be doing a live demo session today. So if my verbal explanation doesn't make a ton of sense, just hang tight because I'm going to show it to you in real time. But essentially what happens is when you're using Priority Matrix to track priorities, track processes, communicate, change priorities, anything under the sun that's happening in terms of collaboration is being tracked in the system, not in like a weird, creepy way, but in a way of making it really convenient to go back if you ever need to check what happened and kind of follow through with the task process. So, what challenges occur when an organization is not using Priority Matrix? And remember, we're specifically talking about audit trails and task history understanding. So what that often looks like is employees are digging through emails trying to find conversations. And I'm sure you guys can relate to this, but oftentimes emails contain a batch of conversations and priorities. So it's not, it's not as easy as just finding an email and being up to date. Challenges also look like unsure of changes made during the task. If you're not tracking your priorities in one central system and all of a sudden a deadline is updated or, maybe a due date is missed and it's such as, the conversation goes, hey, well, we agreed on changing this and, it's a little dicey there. So it's really great just to have all those conversations and that whole audit trail tracked for you. It's also just really difficult to understand the entirety of the task when you look back on it. So if it's in regards to working with a customer or, really anything under the sun that happens in an organization, if a year passes, even 3 to 6 months go by and you need to look back and understand like, hey, what happened with that task? Who was working with that customer? Anything like that. It's very challenging to do that unless you have it tracked in a specific system. So how does Priority Matrix help? Priority Matrix easily tracks conversations, again, not in a weird way, but when you do communicate through Priority Matrix on an item level, it's very easy to find exactly what you're looking for. And I'll go through and I'll show you exactly what I mean with this kind of explanation here. You are able to see all the changes you made during the task process. You can review 3 or more years of item history. And ultimately, there's never uncertainty of task updates, why we made those changes, or what changes were made. So you're going to be able to get started using Priority Matrix with either the Mac, Windows, or mobile application. You can use Priority Matrix on the web app at prioritymatrix.com. And you're also able to use Priority Matrix through Microsoft Teams and Outlook 365 for email management. For me, I like to use Priority Matrix either through the web application or through the Teams platform, and that's what we'll be looking at today. So ultimately, we want to help you be more prepared with Priority Matrix. And what we mean by that is, be more prepared for the meetings you're having, the status updates you share, and just be more prepared for, the uncertainty of what happens 6 months in the future, a year in the future, because for sure you're going to have to go back and review tasks and priorities. And when everything's in the Priority Matrix system, you're ultimately prepared for whatever life throws at you. I mentioned very briefly at the start of the session some of the additional webinars we have, but I just want to touch on this before we dive into the live demo. Some of the webinars that I always suggest everybody attends if you haven't already is first and foremost the introductory session. We try to do those live weekly, and we also do an advanced intro weekly. If you're not able to join them live, we do have them recorded on our YouTube channel. They're about 30 minutes long, and you can watch them at your convenience. Also, if you're living in the Office ecosystem, such as Teams and Outlook, I always suggest attending live or again watching the pre-recorded session, how to get the most out of Office 365 with Priority Matrix, because there we're able to touch on really just the best practices of integrating PM with those systems. So that allows me to transition into the live demo portion for today. This is a really good time to ask any questions that you might have. Happy to answer any of those. And if no questions come up, then what we'll do is just kind of transition into the live demo portion. Again, it's honestly a little bit shorter on my end, but this is a really important concept to understand. So with that being said, let's take a look at what we're talking about here. So for those of you that are brand new to Priority Matrix, the most important thing to understand is that Priority Matrix is here to provide a central location where you and your teammates can collaborate to ultimately be more productive at the end of the day. So we have a couple different project examples here, and projects essentially just represent a group of priorities. So when I open up this product development project, we can see that it's shared with my team members. So ideally, you would be able to share this project with everybody that you're currently working with. And then you can again use this space to communicate. So any type of priority that needs to get done, any status update, any conversation is going to be taking place right here in these projects, right here through these priorities. So on a task level, I'm going to show you guys a couple of really cool things that's going to be tracked. So I'm actually going to scroll all the way back because I've been using this task as an example for quite a while now. And as I'm scrolling back in the bottom right corner, you're able to see what we call an audit trail. So these are, of course, changes just made by myself because, to be honest, this is my demo account, so I don't have anybody else working in here with me. But as you can see, I'm going all the way back, and honestly, I don't even remember how long ago I created this task. It looks like it was actually the start of April. So, this is a pretty lightweight example in terms of how far back we're going. But with our business and enterprise license, you're able to scroll back up to 3 years for an item history. And being with Affluence for 6 years, I can promise you guys that, consistently, I'm going back further than 3 years of conversation, mostly in terms of working with customers and features that we've been working on. But again, I can only imagine the disaster that would be happening if I was literally going through emails looking to find the history of, my relationship with a customer, features we've been working on. But what you can see is this tracks deadlines that I'm updating. It tracks reminders that I've set. It would track any conversation that I have with my teammates. It tells you the date and the time that it happened. So if I change the progress, for example, it's going to show me that. And this is called your audit trail. So it looks like we have a question. Marcus, let me take you off mute. Give me just 1 minute here. Okay, Marcus, you can unmute yourself now.
Hi, Erica. Sorry if I interrupt already.
No, go ahead.
Okay. My question here is, when do you better use the chat or the notes for information? I always struggle a little bit. I put things into my notes, and then I think, okay, but the notes, who is reading the notes? That I know that the chat will be visible or create a message to all the followers, not the notes. So, and sometimes I kind of copy the notes and put it in the chat then. So how would you recommend to use notes versus chat? Do you need to
Mhm.
put everything in the chat so that you have a history that is completely, or is the notes a part of the history in that sense?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it really comes up pretty frequently. So the idea is the chat is a place for a conversation. So if I say, hey, can you work on this for me? Any questions? This is a place where you're conversing with your colleagues. It's a conversation back and forth with multiple people. Whereas if I go to the notes, this is where I would say, okay, we need to get this done. We need to get this done. And it's kind of more of concrete details. You can almost think of it as an extension of the task name. So, for example, I recently made a tutorial for our website, and my managers created the item, and then in the notes they put down every single thing that I needed to talk about in that tutorial, and then we use the chat box as a place to communicate, ask questions, and share updates. And what you'll see is the notes are also tracked in an audit trail. So today it says I made these changes, and then it also says the notes were modified. And if I click on see details, it has highlighted exactly what I changed.
Oh, I see.
So,
There is a connection between the changed notes and the chat box. Now I
mhm,
get. Hey, I didn't notice that until now, that there is
mhm,
a, yeah, because I would say the history is more the notes, right? In the notes, I write down task one done, task two done, maybe task three didn't work, and I need to use method four or something. So that change of processes I see more in the notes than in the chat, because the chat is more the conversation, right? In that
mhm,
sense. Okay.
exactly. Yep. Yep. And one thing to also keep in mind for everybody on the webinar today is when you add followers to an item, so I'll add Bella on here. And then if I drop something into the chat, or I make a change to the notes, or I do anything on the item, reminder, deadline, whatever it is, they're getting notified. So it's not like the only notification that they're getting is for the conversation. Any status change in general notifies that other person. So hopefully that helps clarify. So that's kind of how it works on a task level. One thing to also keep in mind is even if I need to view a finished item, and I promised you guys I do this all the time. Items that are several years old. If I'm like, okay, I need to see everything related to this customer that I've been working with for 5 years, I go to the search bar and then I say, show me all items. And I can type in a keyword. And this is literally showing me current items and old items with this keyword. Again, in my case, I typically do it for customers that I'm working with. I can literally see everything. So even if I don't know how old of a task example I have in here, it looks like we have one from, November of 2019, but this information is still here for me. And I can still see the entire audit trail of this item, even though it's really old. And even for completed items, let's see the oldest completed item that I have. Looks like, not too many back at about a year ago. Again, even if it's completed, I still have this entire audit trail. So this kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm going to show you guys on Friday. But, imagine your employee is working with all of your customers, and then they're no longer with the company. And you need to see every conversation they had with that employee or with their coworkers, so on and so forth. The idea is you're not going to have to dig through your emails to either refer to a current conversation or something that's happened in the past. So, as I mentioned, this webinar is a little bit shorter, but the importance of being aware of the fact that, Priority Matrix is going to support you guys in terms of finding that conversation and giving you an entire audit trail of everything that happened. It's really unique to Priority Matrix. And it's incredibly helpful. And you can also export these items into a CSV, and you can have that conversation laid out really clearly for you. So with that being said, that's kind of all I've got on my side for all of you. I hope you're not disappointed that this one was just a hair shorter than the others. But again, the idea is task history and audit trail. It's endlessly important, and the value here, it really never dissipates because it's always important. Marcus, thanks for the question. Go ahead and come off mute now if you have another one.
Yeah. To have that working, I need that really everyone uses priority matrix at full scale. That means all emails to the subject that a colleague of mine gets, he needs to attach to the item, right? So that's necessary. Otherwise, I will miss things. So, am I right?
Well, what happens is when I go to the search view, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding your question, but I can type in again a keyword. I'll just use the word meeting, for example. What happens is I'm looking through all of the priority matrix items that I have with that keyword. But at the bottom where it says Office 365, if you're using priority matrix through Microsoft Teams, you're also seeing all of your emails that have this keyword. So, but these are only your own emails. So if, to your point, Marcus, if one of your colleagues gets an email from, a client or something, and you want to be aware of that, they would need to put it into priority matrix for you to be able to see it and track it. But on your own side, your emails are showing up here as well. Does that make sense?
Okay, but then I don't really need to put all the emails via the Outlook feature into the item when I have it here, right? So is it a double? I really have the habit now that all emails that belongs to an item, I attach to the item so that I have it in the item. I guess that's the right thing to do. But now it looks like as if I can choose that down there and I don't need to do that. Make that work kind of. What is better?
It is, yeah. So it is definitely the right thing to do to put it into priority matrix, because this is just visibility into your inbox, but there's no real audit trail happening here. So if I need to set a due date, or I need to prioritize it, or I need to track what's happening with this email, there's no way to do it if it's in Outlook. You can just simply see it. But the second I prioritize it, like I just did, I can say it's now going to, let's say, due in 4 days, for example. So now we're kind of starting that process of creating that audit trail of everything that happens with this email. So definitely stick with that habit. It is important to have everything cemented into priority matrix. This is just kind of your window into seeing things, if that makes sense.
So either here via that feature or with the Outlook add-on. That doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Way is then okay. So
Exactly.
yeah. And normally, I guess if there is a project that a colleague is involved, then maybe the email goes anyway to both. So I will get it most of the time. I get it too, not only him or her, but I will get it too. So we both have it, and I can put it in the item if he or she isn't doing it right. Yeah. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
perfect example.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, great questions. Anybody else have questions for today? Would love to answer those for you. Awesome. Well, if there are no questions, again, we can wrap up a little bit earlier today. I'm going to stop the recording here.